Did anybody ever doubt yourself because of your dyslexia, and did you ever doubt yourself?
Well, quite an amusing story is that age 50, we had the biggest private group of companies in Europe, and I had a board meeting, and in the board meeting, somebody gave me some figures for one of our companies, and I said, "Is that good news or bad news?" And one of my directors looked at me and said, "Richard, you don't know the difference between net and gross, do you?" And I went, "Okay, well, you know, I hadn't admitted it to anybody, but I didn't." So he pulls out a bit of paper, and he brought some crayons in. So he colours the piece of paper in blue, and then he puts a net in the blue sea, and says, and then he puts a little fish in the net, and he says, the fish in the net, they are your profit at the end of the year. And the rest of the sea, which are outside the net, that's your turnover. And suddenly I went, okay, I now know the difference between net and gross. But
Yeah. Are you ever nervous talking about your dyslexia, and when did you feel comfortable in your own shoes?
you know, from my 20s, I started talking about the fact that that I've discovered that I was dyslexic, and I did it on purpose because I think it's important for other, especially young kids who've been told that they're dyslexic, to see that that successful people can get through it, and that if they follow their particular dreams, they follow what they're good at, that they can be even more successful at what they're good at than others. So and there are so many people like myself who've excelled in their individual professions, who have been dyslexic. So I think it's really important that people who are dyslexic get out and talk about it.
When I was at drama school, I had an agent. I was fortunate. I got an agent before I went to drama school because I had done this play, and an agent from that British Drama Academy, there was one-off performance, and actually I froze on stage in that play. It was like I had stage fright or whatever it was. Obviously it was probably more connected to the fact, the dyslexia aspect of it, I think. I just was like, I froze, I couldn't remember anything, I went blank. But I got an agent, nevertheless, from that show. Something was working. And that led to some auditioning, and I auditioned through drama school, and the gift of dyslexia in that instance for me was that I learned everything inside out, so I was fully prepared. So I had done many meetings before I met for Peter Jackson, for example, which was the first major, was my first role out of drama school. Outside, after I left drama school, it was the first role I got when I left drama school, which was incredible. But I had been in many rooms and I'd really learnt the dialogue, so I was very well prepared, you know what I mean, I suppose, and that was a good thing. But it was a nightmare, it was really hard work, and I would have to get my sides well in advance. I'd tell my agent, I need the sides at least 2 or 3 days in advance, because I would find if I learnt my lines at night and slept on them and then looked at them first thing in the morning, they would sort of sink in, and I needed 2 nights to have them, you know what I mean? To have them really solid there. It's posed a problem sometimes on films because, you'll get the sides the day of sometimes because, it's just, that's the nature of the business. But I don't know, one way or another, I guess, on films I've managed to
What happens with teleprompters? Do you have trouble with that? If you have to read,
I mastered reading out loud in drama school somehow. The 3 years of training at drama school really, with reading stuff like Milton's Paradise Lost, where the imagery is so profound and great, you start to connect with thoughts. And I had this great teacher, Russian director, who couldn't speak English actually, and he had a translator, but he seemed to be able to see your soul when you were performing as opposed to anything else. But he taught us to learn everything by thought. So as opposed to just learning the text, just learn the thoughts and then forget the text. And we weren't allowed to even recite the text. So that sort of stuff helped.
What was and is the #1 difficulty that you've had with your dyslexia, even though you've just been diagnosed only a few years ago?
Yeah, 5 years ago I was diagnosed as having been dyslexic for my entire life, and which explained a lot of things. It was like the last puzzle part in a tremendous mystery that I've kept to myself all these years.
Yeah. That
basically started with just things that happen when you're a kid in school and you're a slow reader.
Yeah.
And in my case, I was actually unable to read for at least 2 years. I was 2 years behind the rest of my class. And of course I went through what everybody goes through, is teasing.
Yeah.
And I had to go through that for a long time. And so the teasing, you know, led to a lot of other problems I was having in school. But it all stemmed from the fact that I was embarrassed to stand up in front of the class and read.
Ceramics and art. It was really sad actually, because I had not sad, but it's kind of annoying because I had an art teacher, and I remember one day I was scribbling on a page, and I used to do this thing where I'd just take a pencil and scribble on a page, and then I would color in between the scribbles. You know, I would do lines or dots or shade it in different colors and things, and it just made a pretty, to my mind, probably a pretty pattern. But it was me being creative, and she kind of poo-pooed it, this teacher, and so I kind of dropped art. I went into ceramics and did ceramics and sculpture, which was great. But then I had to pick up art again. And I think creativity is the key to any child who has dyslexia. I think for anyone actually, if you're creative in business, if you're creative as a police officer, if you're creative in any field in life, I think you can be that much more successful, because it just means you're thinking outside the box. But I think for me, as a child, I think creativity, you know, was the key, you know. And when I was on stage performing, was creating, when I was building models. But it was really, you know, that was what got me through.
So when you got bullied, how did you deal with that?
I got bullied. I dealt with it by making movies.
Yeah.
I mean, making movies was my cover-up.
If you had any advice to give for young kids who have dyslexia and who are just finding out what they're going through now, what would you tell them?
Just that it's more common than you've ever could imagine, and that you're not alone, and that there are ways to accelerate your reading skills, to accelerate your comprehension, and there are ways to deal with it. It's not an incurable thing. It's something you're going to have the rest of your life, but you can sort of, you know, dart between the raindrops to get where you want to go, and it will not hold you back.
Being different is definitely good, and
I mean,
you should be proud of whatever you are.
I mean, being different, you can go to space.
Yeah, exactly. You can get other people to build the spaceships. You don't have to build them yourself.